Hey.
Welcome, everybody. Today, we are talking about a culture of continuous feedback. I'm sure we're going to dig into the context of coaching and what it is, how it works, how to think about it, how to apply it. But the idea that there's a one and done component, I think that's the first sign that it's not coaching at all. And it's definitely something that's guaranteed to leave people stuck, because growth happens when feedback is baked into the culture, when it's supported by systems, when it makes it easy to be consistent and continuous. So today we're going to talk about feedback itself, the rhythms behind it, how to improve it, how to maybe have a continuous improvement, and how when you do that, it increases confidence. It not only keeps your top performers engaged, but it actually helps everyone feel like work is a place they want to be and they're a part of a team. Some of the things we're touching on today are why coaching fails when it is an event, and why events aren't coaching even. What feedback loops are and how they work, how peer-to-peer knowledge sharing works, and even peer-to-peer gamification. And I had a great meeting with a guy yesterday who's really implementing that kind of stuff. But lastly, how to not only recognize improvement, but acknowledge it and focus on improvement instead of results. So yeah, with that, where do you guys want to start with this one?
All right. We're going to say this. I think we need to clarify gamification, because one of my personal bugaboos right now is that everything is being gamified and nothing works well. And so, I think we need to dig into that and talk about how to make sure that this process actually is gamified in a way that people want to participate. And it's not just, oh boy, it's a game. That's
A point
so
system with
cool.
stickers? Hooray.
So that's just sometime today. I'd like to talk about that, I suppose.
Perfect. And I guess on top of that, let's start unpacking coaching itself as a concept, as a principle, as a practice. Let's take a look at that. Then let's take a look at the culture. And then I think if we get those two pieces, we can start discussing feedback, right? The environment that feedback occurs inside of, the formulas that make it work.
Yeah.
And then if we have that, there might be a game that can be played that's worth playing and maybe even, worth engaging in.
Yeah, and we'll need to talk about game theory a little bit in here, because I think that it's going to be particularly relevant and insightful.
Awesome.
So who's the coach? Let's start there. Who is a coach and what is coaching? Because, I don't want to go too far down this route, but isn't everyone a coach these days?
Nope.
They think they are.
Perfect. Let's start that.
If you walk around barking orders, you're not coaching. Right? If you're just telling people what to do, that's not coaching. Pulling solutions from the person so that they own their outcomes, having them self-assess, right? Being facilitative in your posture, offering ideas, not commanding what to do, but here's 3 or 4 ideas to also add to your pool of ideas, right? Based on your in-depth knowledge of your context, your own abilities and passions, which of these ideas do you think you might want to try? Right? And then we think forward to, what can I do to help you? And please invite me to the next 3 meetings where you're going to actually do the thing. And my job in that meeting will solely be, according to your wants, needs, and desires, to take notes, watch, and give you some feedback on that. So if you really want performance to change as a leader, psychological safety when you're coaching, SBI only gets you halfway there. Please don't stop with what bad looks like. If you're not going to talk about what good looks like, don't even bother. So, yeah, that report sucked. Not really actionable. Let's not do that. That's not coaching.
So you used a magic word there, facilitation. What is that? How do we create that by definition?
Yeah, I think Zach used the famous word from philosophy last episode, right? He said the Socratic method, right? So it is about questioning. Facilitating is ultimately questioning far more. Think of it like 80-20, right? If 20% of the time you're telling, 80% of the time you should be facilitating. And that keeps the ownership with the person, right? The responsibility, the empowerment, all of it with them. Yeah. What do you think, Zach? Like how deep in a Socratic method do you want to go?
I think that with Socratic method, the important part is recognizing that the person that thinks that they're in the driver's seat should never be in the driver's seat of that conversation. Whenever you're having Socratic dialogue, it's always that the person who is the learner is in the driver's seat,
Right.
simply because you're asking questions to gauge their understanding and helping them come to the realizations themselves. Socratic dialogue works best when you are talking about the soft skills, I think, not necessarily, and some tactical things. Sometimes I think that, like, if someone is, okay, this is where you separate good therapy and good coaching and bad coaching, because the bad coaches will always apply Socratic dialogue. So how do you think you should solve your problem? I don't know. That's why I paid you $10,000. Tell me, you genius. Like, when you're in that situation, like that's when people get pissed off, right? Because, like, sometimes people genuinely don't know the answer, and that's when they need people like us, consultants, who can come in. We have answers. We have tactics that you can deploy right now to solve that problem. Sometimes people genuinely don't know the answer, but sometimes they do know the answer. They just need to think through it a little bit.
Right.
And that's where the Socratic dialogue and the coaching comes in. But again, bad coaches will play that drum like it is the only thing in existence. And you need to have a good blend. Wow, my hair's going away. You need to have a good blend of different tools that as a coach you can use. Socratic dialogue, asking questions to help them work through to the answer, is one way to do that.
I think you're bringing up something. We touched on facts a lot in a recent conversation. You know, the context was having an SOP, right? Like, this item goes to this setting, things like that. And so I think one of the things I'd like to start, digging into a little bit today as well is, when you provide that structure, then how do you create this environment, this culture, this feedback space, so that people can use those guardrails to improve themselves, the processes, those sorts of things, right? Because that's part of the idea behind this stuff. If it always worked to just say follow steps 1 through 10, don't deviate, don't think, then we'd be back to assembly lines. Like, obviously we want people who are, dare I say, paid to think to a certain degree.
Especially in, I just want to add to that real quick.
Please, yeah.
Because, and this is my monthly rant on the education system. Our education sucks. We are stuck in an industrial education system, and we're living in what I would call the post-information age, right? where we are focused on in education, teaching people what to think or what to do, and when you see this problem, this is what you think, this is how you solve the problem. Very, assembly driven sort of approach. We need to teach people how to think through a problem, which is what classical education and rhetoric does. So I want to say that. But to your point, Jacob, living in a post-information age means that it's not just about how to think, but it's about how to find access to the right information to solve the problem. And that's something that not many people have mastered, because if you asked someone off the street, hey, you have this question, where are you going? They're going to say Google, or they're going to say Chat GPT. That's what they're going to say. And they don't even realize that, I think it was something like 60% of all of the information that they train Chat GPT on now comes from Reddit, which is just not even remotely a good idea, but they still do it. And I'm a Redditor, I use Reddit, but I don't look at what Reddit says as the gospel. And I don't think that if people knew, oh, so you're just crowdsourcing this information basically, that they would trust it as much as they do. And so that's part of this, is helping people find access to the right information.
Yeah, so we have resourcefulness, diligence, right? Learning agility with a big clump of discernment and skepticism. Right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of garbage in Reddit too, right? Like you can't trust everything you read on the internet. And I think everyone knows that, but does that mean that they adhere to that? I don't know.
I think you do. Frankly, I think most people don't adhere to that.
Right.
Think about it. People naturally want to conserve energy as much as possible. It's a natural law. It's thermodynamics. People want to conserve energy for doing important things like running from a bear. So what do we do instead? Well, we take the easiest way out, and we're going to take shortcuts all the time. Part of that is shortcuts in thinking. That's what biases and rules of thumb do for us.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, I think that it's recognizing the natural urge and saying, yeah, okay, I'm going to go to Google first, or I'm going to go to Chat GPT first. But then I'm also going to verify that information. And I think that just taking that extra step is a huge difference here, particularly when it comes to coaching and stuff like this. I will never forget, there are 2 episodes of The Office. One is, I think it's Moroccan Christmas, where they recognize that Meredith has a drinking problem. And so what does Michael do? He decides we need to stage an intervention at our office Christmas party. And he gets on the internet and he searches out and he finds this, it's a list of questions to use in your intervention for your family member or friend. And one of the questions is, has your drinking ever caused you to question the teachings of the Mormon Church? I am a member of that church. It's called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I will tell you, we do not ever ask that when it comes to stuff like this. That was not an official document. I do not speak for the church. But I will say that it's Michael Scott did it. There's another one where he does it with negotiations. And
Right.
it's Michael Scott is everybody. That's why The Office lands so well. And it's just recognizing that and then doing something about it. And it doesn't have to be a big lift.
And why not, in our current state of having more than 5 high quality large language models to pull from, do we not write one really rigorous prompt that says something like, all data must be from validated resources and properly indexed and cited, right?
Yes.
To guard against
Yes.
hallucination. And then put that puppy in GPT, Claude, Grok, Gemini, right? Like ding to ding to ding to ding to ding, and let them all go off and do a thing. And then compare and contrast, right? Apply some of your experiment.
I think you're right. And I think the hardest part of that is actually writing the stinking prompt, the rigorous prompt.
Right.
So I'll give everybody a shortcut. Okay. I use Perplexity and I use ChatGPT. And I told Perplexity, I want you to go and research all of the best practices for writing a prompt. Then I told ChatGPT, you're an expert prompt writer. These are the best practices that you use. So now I have ChatGPT. I say, I need you to write a prompt that does this. Now, here's the thing that's been really cool. The first few prompts, I would feed that back into Perplexity, and I would say, based off of the criteria that you just created, give this a score out of 100 and provide recommendations on how to improve this prompt. And then it would do that, and then I just literally feed the output from Perplexity into ChatGPT, and it creates this prompt. And when it's 100 out of 100, bingo, you execute the prompt in ChatGPT. So there's your shortcut, folks.
Right. Meta prompting. Right. Yes. Point the AI at AI. Have them be battle bots for you.
Now, let's take the battle out and talk about how we apply that exact same process to people. You help each other.
When I structure leadership development programs, one of the most valuable modalities that I deploy when turning them into programs is peer coaching. When you meet with somebody at your level, right, and there's not a power dynamic, there's not an exposure, you don't have to be like risky, vulnerable or anything, right? It's just, it's two supervisors of assembly helping each other, right? Like that's money. There's a little bit of art to it. You gotta make sure people can get along and at least communicate, because that's not true for everybody, but by and large, wildly effective. Peer coaching. Yeah, big fan. Totally agree, Jacob.
Now, how does that stuff work when there is hierarchy, perceived or real?
So this is the thing that's tricky. I think that personally, and Rob, you probably have really great insights, better than mine on this. Hierarchies aren't a big deal unless egos get involved. When egos get involved, then the hierarchy becomes a big deal. And I'll be honest, I've worked in teams where the ego was involved, and you just learn how to work around the ego, right? It's like, I've worked in teams where the guy had to be the top dog, right? And it's like, okay, you can be the top dog. I'm going to sit over here and be what I guess the kids today call a Sigma male, which is I've spit myself out of the whole ecosystem and don't really care in this instance. All I care about is getting crap done. So I'll give you, I'll pat you on the back. I'll give you your kudos. And then I'll also, in a tactful way, say, hey, what about this? And it's what Jocko Willink calls leading up and down the chain of command.
Perfect.
If egos aren't involved and everybody is mission aligned, then it's easy to provide that feedback, right? Yeah, that's so my 2 cents.
Now we're getting to a place that I was hoping we'd get to. So we have that, but then mission aligned means somewhere above and around the coaching is leadership. Right? Like there's, hey, we're here to get this done. I trust all you to do it. You're going to have to figure it out amongst yourselves. This is where we're going. This is what the project is. And then how does that stuff work? Because I dropped that word earlier. I grabbed it because it sounds to me like we're getting back to facilitation.
Articulating the vision, right?
Okay.
Alignment to mission, right? All
Okay.
these parts of the same thing, right? That's the big why. Relating that to an individual's efforts gives them a sense of purpose, right? So that's an important piece of any leadership conversation. And we could go through change management models depending on the nature of the decision and those kinds of things. Sometimes the language can change a little bit, but by and large, why do I want you to improve in this way? Why is this important that you improve in this way? Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's, I believe in you. I see the potential. Here's the gap, right?
Yeah.
I
would add to that, why do you want to improve in this way? Right? Because a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. And so it's like you have to present it in a way that is beneficial to them, that is very clear. What's like the what's in it for them is very, very spelled out so that they can understand and have a motivation.
And then I find there's an additional question from the perspective of the work that we do, because, again, we take people-centric organizations and turn them into process and system-based, and then enable it with technology to serve the people. So then the question is going to that person, why do you want this to work that way?
Mm-hmm.
Right? How is this actually empowering, enabling, making your job, life easier, supporting customers that you're serving? But again, there's another kind of layer of facilitation in there, because that stuff, if it's not set up well, can automate the wrong thing, can put leverage in the wrong place, can add a ton of what you don't want.
in the process improvement world, we call that sub-optimizing, right?
Yes.
I would call that suboptimal, yes.
Yeah.
Look how efficient marketing got. Meanwhile, procurement's like, whoa, 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 whoa. You just pitched all that work over here. You didn't actually save any money.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's where we start to be able to look at how does this stuff actually serve the customer, which, again, some forms of training and seminars and that kind of stuff are all about how do we make us better for the sake of us, not for them.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and that is the ultimate question. I think that, when you're talking about team development, there are typically 4 phases, and Rob, you may have heard this. It starts with the forming phase, which is where everybody's kind of come together. They're looking around, trying to figure out what they're doing, where they're supposed to be going. Then you move into the storming phase, which is where there's disagreement on where we're going, how we should handle things. Then you move into the norming phase, which is where people are starting to agree on, okay, this is the direction that we want to go, or this is our goal at least. And then you have the performing phase, where people have finally aligned on the goal and the method to get there. And that takes a lot of work. And I think that we typically expect businesses and teams to just be there. And I think that the better leaders automatically go in knowing, no, it's going to take a while for us to get to that performing phase. But if I'm the right kind of leader, I'm constantly hammering, this is where we're going. We're going to be $1 billion company. This is what we're doing. We're going to be the gold standard when it comes to low customer turnover. This is what we're doing. They're constantly hammering that, and then allowing the team to figure out the methodology to get there. And that's the coaching part, right? That's where the Socratic method comes into play, because you're talking about, okay, you have all of these skills, team. Let's take Bob, let's take your tank treads. Steve, let's take your motorcycle handles. Stacy, we're going to take your outboard motor. And Phil, we're going to take your skis, and let's build a snowmobile here. Like, that's what good leadership and good coaching does. But you are sort of taking all of these disparate skills. And I'm not certain that enough leaders are aware of that, and they just kind of go in expecting, oh, everybody should just work together great right off the bat. And they're not automatically baking this team development into the process.
So is this the place where gamification can work either for or against you?
I think so. Because I think that people, again, gamification is a tool, just like the Socratic method is a tool. And I think that people overuse gamification hoping that it will solve their problems just because, oh boy, it's fun now.
They do it poorly. So it's a waste of time in terms of its educational value, but tremendous fun and a distraction. Right? They do it poorly. You can do gamification intelligently, right? Simulations are kind of the standard in that realm. And if people were more competent game designers who understood how game modalities related to workplace systems, right? The concept of inventory management, the concept of financial management, right? Like, you can put all those things into games. They're there. You can engineer them in different ways. So it's just not everyone can do that, right? It takes a particular mind. So when people don't play games try to design games, you get garbage games. You get
a point system that takes you away from the goal, perhaps.
That's right.
So now this is where game theory comes into play.
Okay.
This is where game theory comes into play, because most people don't understand what game theory is, but it's actually a really useful tool to have at least a ground level. Like, get on YouTube, watch a simple course about game theory. You will be way better for it.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know, do you guys watch Survivor? My wife converted me to watch Survivor. We watch it every season. They have someone who is a game theorist on their staff. I am convinced.
Yep.
Because of the way that they are organizing things. So what game theory says is essentially, if you have different parties coming at situations, they're going to act in their best interests every time. Now, in a given situation, you only have a certain number of things that you can do, right? So, for example, and this was developed actually during the Cold War to help explain why we would or would not go to war with the Soviet Union, and it helped inspire mutually assured destruction policies. So, basically, what they did, I know it's Zach's tidbit of useless information for the day. But basically what it is let's say, Rob, that you go into a bar, you're getting a drink with your wife. Some guy comes up and he starts hitting on your wife. And at that point, you're like, hey man, you have two options. You can either let this guy hit on your wife, or you can stop him from hitting on your wife, right? Mm-hmm. That is the only options that you have in that situation. It's not like, oh, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to walk out of the room. Okay, well, that is letting him flirt with your wife, right? Or I'm going to crash a bar stool over his head. Okay, well, that's not letting him flirt with your wife. So those are the two options that you have. And this guy has two options, right? He can either stop flirting with your wife, or he can flirt with your wife. And if he decides to flirt with your wife and you decide to stop him from flirting with your wife, then there's going to be trouble. If he decides not to flirt with your wife and you decide to stop him from flirting with your wife, then it's a win for you, right? So there's all of this information about game theory that's out there. But the critical point that you need to understand with this is that you design games all the time in your life. And when you design these games, you want to be sure that there is mutual wins with these games. That when that both players of these games or all players of these games win. Or in other words, that the people who are being coached win from the game and the people who are coaching win from the game. I'll give you an example. There's a really great tool for sales teams out there called Spinify that allows you to gamify your sales outreach, right? The reason it's so good is because you can do rewards for competitions that your team is having. So at that point, you're reaching out to the team, you're doing a survey, you're saying, hey, for the next reward, do you want $150 new speaker? Or do you want a $150 gift card to a restaurant of your choice?
Okay.
Right? And so you're giving the team these options, right? The win is the team, they get the gift card, right? That's the win for the team. The win for the coach or the supervisor is I get my team to do more of the behavior that I want them to do, right? And in that way, it's like, oh, okay, this is kind of fun. I can now challenge people. There's a point for me doing this. And this isn't just the office pizza party. This is something that the team has said, this is something that I care about and that I want. And that's how you build good games that actually drive the outcomes that you want. But most of the time, the coach side or the supervisor side does not spend enough time thinking about how do I do this so that they get what they want out of it. They only focus on what the supervisor wants out of the situation. And that's why the game is so incredibly lame.
Right. I did a custom game design at one of the companies I used to work for with a partner from Germany called Simdustry. And that's literally their whole business is built on business game design. Hard board games as well as digital games for remote learning, right? They will model your business in a safe failure environment.
That's pretty cool.
So we put it together, modeled the business, played it through, balanced all the variables, right? That's the diligence that makes the game work. And then we put people on teams to run that business as a team and gave them each a different hat. But you can't be such a tyrant in a silo or you'll fail, right? The dynamic design of the game requires collaboration and strategic decision-making. And by the way, there's 5 bad orders in there that you shouldn't agree to produce, right? Not all business is good business. So discernment and really thinking critically and, oh, these are the skills we're going to learn by playing a game, critical thinking, business acumen, right? Theory of constraint. Yes, 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 yes. And they knew all that before going in. But boy, was there skepticism. We're really going to play a game in training? Yep. And after the 4 hours was over, the last thing they wanted to do was stop. They were literally begging, could they please finish producing all the orders? Can we please? Come on, we're getting good at it. It'll only take us another, hour and a half. Right? That's when you know you did it right. Right? They learned the skills and they had a good time as a team, right? And they wanted to keep going. Right? It's possible. Yeah. It's possible. It takes a lot of work. Good game design takes a lot of work. but boy, does it pay off when you do it.
That's a unique factor. I think I'm trying to think about all the different board games I played growing up and how many of them were meant to be finished, right? Where that last 30% actually felt good. And it wasn't this thing that just dragged on. There's not a huge list of those games that I remember where you get bored of and walk away or something happens. But yeah, like you guys designed something that people wanted to complete.
Yeah, and it takes it's a different mind, right, to design it versus you got to understand who you're designing for.
Yes.
Right? So I grew up playing, let's call them long games, like 2-3 days over multiple weekends, right? Like long game maps on the floor in my buddy's living room, right? Spatial dimensions and like it's a whole thing, right?
He's talking Axis and Allies.
Yeah, we did Axis and Allies. We played a bunch of others. Now we play long form 3 to 5 hour stuff. But when you get good at that kind of stuff, and then you say, well, what are the learnings that the person needs to have, and what are the different game modalities that I know of from playing Great Western Trail and Return to Dark Tower and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Well, do I want to have dice in this? Yes or no? Do I want to have cards? Is it deck building? Is it tableau building? Do I have a sense of spatial conquest? Do I need to have resource management, inventory planning? Do I need and then how do you cobble it together? And then how do you balance it? Right? What are the strategies that are available in the complexity to be able to pursue a win? Right? When you play Clans of Caledonia, one of the first decisions you make is what clan you're going to play as. And you're a complete fool and will not win if you do not formulate your strategy based on the strengths of your clan.
Right.
Right. If your clan says dairy farmer, guess what you should do? Right? Be a dairy farmer.
Yeah.
So yeah, it takes a certain brain to design, but you must design according to the outcomes and in accordance with who your learners are. Right?
Right.
If you make it too crunchy, not everyone can bolt onto it.
If it's purely about KPIs, it's not really a game. It's just a tasking.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
True balance scorecard, right? True balance.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I think that we need people to, as they do that scorecard, remember that they're structuring it so that both sides have the win and the lose. Like they'll lose for not participating in the game.
Yeah. Which kind of brings back that whole model and conversation around coaching. Right? Like it's there for both parties to win, not for this person to be right.
Yep. Putting people on a team, right? You will win as a team. You will lose as a team. Help each other, coach each other, listen, let everyone bring their strengths and their opinions, right? If you start shutting people out, if ops isn't part of the discussion, how are you going to make good decisions, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I love that you brought that up because I repeat this ad nauseum. Your business is not a bunch of silos. Your business is like the human body. You've got the heart, you've got the lungs, you've got the liver, you've got the kidneys, you've got the legs, you've got the arms. Like all of those parts work together to create a healthy, functioning human body. Jacob, I believe you have a medical background, right? What happens if you remove someone's heart?
There's a long list of do not removes.
There's a
the same result. Exact same result across the board.
Right. And that's
Yeah.
the thing is it's like, if your heart gets sick, it impacts everything else. One of the weirdest things is the correlation between tartar in your mouth and heart disease. Like, your body is interconnected and your business
Yep.
is interconnected.
Yep.
What happens in sales impacts marketing, impacts product, impacts operations, impacts accounting, impacts legal, like, and you have to look at it that way. And so making sure that you have these teams that are put together that can talk to each other and explain what's going on and make sure that everybody's on the same page, and that the actions that one particular organ, right, is taking isn't going to have a negative impact down the line on the lungs or the heart. So sales taking an action like, hey, we're going to do this amazing discount, isn't going to negatively impact operations who's already at capacity and can't fulfill what they've already got.
Right.
Or Rob, I believe you talked about the example of someone sales juicing the numbers and trying to do excavation jobs in Maine in the middle of January.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah. We had an assessment recently where because of the goal, the leadership wanted to put more money into more leads and add more sales seats when the right hire was a customer success manager, right? To keep who was there longer. If they had done only that pre-transaction work, they were going to print their business out of existence.
Right.
And so again,
Yeah.
like that's another very broad version of the game too, which is understanding the, in the terms of the business itself, like what is the game you're playing? And yeah.
Yes. And
can have-
so that go ahead.
I
Does
was
the
just going to say
game
lasting impact.
change, right?
Mhm.
Lasting impact at 20 million is different than a lasting impact at 50 million, is different than at 100, is different than at 200, 500, a billion, right? All the breakpoints.
Yeah.
It's the game is not the same game.
It must change.
It must. And if you
It
don't
must.
recognize it, that's why you go out of business.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said.
Yeah. What got you here won't get you there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this was an odd way to take coaching, but I think that it was very beneficial. Seriously, I think that coaching is, everyone thinks that they can be a coach.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a really special skill set to be a coach, not just like, oh, I spent 20 minutes and I got my coaching certification. Like there was literally someone who spent 20 minutes, paid I think it was $80, and got certified as a trauma coach.
Oh.
They are not a good trauma coach. They don't know what they're doing. Like, coaching takes a very specific skill set and it takes a very specific mindset.
Yes.
And I really appreciate the approach that we took to that today.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Agreed. Mindset, like, there's almost no ego in it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It has to be for other. You can win in it, but that can't be the lead intent, right? That can't be the driver.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Dig it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you guys for your time, your insight, and the wisdom. And yeah, we'll be back here, same time, same place, different subject. Be well.